I forget. And we'll see, just give everyone a couple more seconds. Hello, Vicky. Good to see you on here. Super happy. I had a few people message that they can't make it because they're at work or, you know, that darn work thing. So, but that's why we're going to have a replay. So, all right. Hi, Nick. Good to see you. Okay.
Hello.
Hello, hello. Hi, Erin. Wow, so many people I know. It's so exciting. Thank you all for joining me. I appreciate you all supporting me in this. This is so cool. Hi, Rika. Okay. Share. I'm going to just share my screen.
Hi, I'm in the car driving, so I'll just be mute and invisible, but I'm listening in.
Okay, awesome. Thanks for letting me know. Cool. Can you all see my screen? Yes. Okay. I'm just going to make sure. Okay. So we're all muted. I'm not muted, hopefully. Okay, cool. I can see some of you and I've got my setup here. All right, cool. So thank you so much to all of you who are joining me live. And like I said, there will be a replay. So I'm super excited to be sharing this topic. Is near and dear to my heart because emotions are something that I struggled with, sometimes continue to struggle with for many years. But it's something that we don't have to struggle with. And so that's why I designed this masterclass, to give you a simple tool to manage emotion in the moment that they get really intense. You know, whether it's a big trigger that happens or something that is, you know, accosts you out of the blue, but you don't really know why it's coming up. This tool will help you through that. And it's something that is pretty simple, pretty basic, but it works. Okay, so for those of you who have some training already in emotional mastery, I invite you to keep a beginner's mind open and see what you can, what new piece of information you can learn, and just be open to this, this amazing tool. Okay, so here's a quick intro as to what we're going to do today. We have an hour, and definitely want to leave lots of time for questions at the end for those of you who will have questions. So I'm briefly going to tell you a little bit about myself. Then we're going to look at what emotions are. We're going to look at the actual CPR tool. I'm going to share how to use it, and then for those of you who have any questions, you know, definitely I will have time at the end, but if you have a burning question in between, please just stick it in the chat and I will try to pay attention. After that, we're going to look at some tips and some emotional traps because they always come up. And then I've got a super exciting invitation for you for my new Feeling Spacious experience community that I'm starting. Okay. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Kasia, and I am a certified integrative life coach and intuitive for big impact makers, meaning I love to work with men and women who have a desire to bring a big mission to the world and want to live a happy life while they're at it. I don't think you need to sacrifice one for the other. I work with mainly entrepreneurs, emerging thought leaders, and coaches who have this big influential message they want to be known for out there in the world. Some of the modalities and tools that I work with are the Akashic Records, Divine Numerology, and Energy Kinesiology, and other strategic tools. So when we work together with clients, it's really a bespoke process. There's no cookie cutters when it comes to working with me. And I believe that you need 3 things for sustained success and meaning. And those are emotional mastery, thought mastery, and knowing how to focus your energy. So today we're going to focus obviously on a little tiny piece of emotional mastery. Some bits about me. I am an open book. I believe we can stop passing our pain down to future generations. It takes diligence, it takes effort and energy, but we can do it. I am a student of science and spirituality, and I believe that when we understand even a tiny bit of what we're doing and why we're doing it, we can transform a lot faster. I'm feisty, I swear, sometimes a lot. So if swearing offends you, I apologize in advance. Sometimes they just slip out. And I am a mom of two amazing, tall, very tall teenage humans, two furry beasts, a snake, and married to an amazing, hilarious man. But what those pictures don't show you is that I used to live in my head a lot, and I suffered from depression for a really long time. I had really low confidence, and my thoughts and emotions really just controlled me and controlled my perception of my life. At one point, I even thought that my family and the world would be better off without me. It was one of those dark, stormy nights in Vancouver where I lived at the time. And I heard this voice in my head as I was sort of contemplating, okay, so how does one do this? And the voice said, you created this, you can create something different. And it was like, for the first time in my life, I realized that I had a choice. It was revolutionary to me. Receiving that message really put me on a path of massive healing, self-discovery, and education, especially when it came to mental and emotional health. And so that's why I'm so passionate about sharing these emotional mastery tools. And that's what I'm going to be sharing with you today is a tool that I developed called emotional CPR, because it literally helped me save my life. Okay, why focus on emotions? This is something that I've been asked, many times. And one of the main reasons, we could start with looking at thoughts, but there's a reason why I think emotions are easier. Okay, emotions are part of being human, and they are this ever-present flavor in our life, right? Whether we like them or not, and whether we like to feel them or not, they are there. But so many of us were not taught what emotions are, where they come from, and why we have them, right? So many of us were even given this message that emotions are actually not okay to feel. I'm just going to make sure that I am recording. Yes, I am recording. Okay. Sorry. Just had this thought of, oh my gosh, I better record this. So we were given this message that emotions aren't okay to feel, right? We were told by our caregivers, our parents, people who were influencers in our life that you can't feel sad, you can't show your anger, you can't speak about how this feels, because it made them really uncomfortable. They didn't know how to feel emotion, and that's because no one taught them. Right? We've got these generations that came before us that have no clue about emotion. And so is it any wonder that they didn't pass that wisdom down to us, right? Even with the vast amounts of information out there about emotional intelligence, like the books, the programs, all of that, there are still so many people who don't know what emotional mastery actually is, or how do you handle a difficult emotion or an intense emotion. So we could actually start by focusing on our thoughts, right? We could. There's nothing wrong with that approach. But I find it easier to start with emotions because I find that they are more obvious. So that means we can catch them more easily. When we look at, for example, Deepak Chopra's work, he says we have about 70,000 thoughts in one day. That means those suckers are running like a freight train, right? So if we're not really mindful and aware and used to that practice, it's really, really hard to catch them. But an emotion which has typically a degree of intensity is a lot easier to catch. And so that's why I tend to focus on emotions with all the clients that I work with, is that's where we start. And so I'm on a mission to change this suffering in the world that so many people experience, whether you've done emotional work already or not. I bet you there's still times when you're like, I've been through this, like I've done this before, why is this still coming up? I want everyone, men, women, and the children in their influence sphere to be able to know what to do when that emotion comes up. And so my biggest goal is to teach you a tool that allows you to have more choice. Because when we have spaciousness around our emotion, when we have that ability to notice that we're feeling it, but then respond how we want rather than just reacting, that's gold. That is such an important part of life. Now, you will need to practice this. As much as this is an amazing, simple tool, it's not a magic wand. It doesn't make emotions go away, nor do we want emotions to go away, right? We simply want to be able to know what to do with them. So yes, this will need to be a consistent practice. How long? Well, until it's second nature, right? Until you know that you can handle anything that life throws at you. And how long is that? It really depends on your intention for yourself and your willingness to practice this and make it a habit for yourself. So yes, even after you use this tool a few times, you will still need to be diligent with it and with your thoughts and emotions, because we have these things called neural networks in our brain, and those are wired for us to continue on the familiar path. Right? That's what path of least resistance. That's how we're built. And so when we're learning something new, it feels really difficult. But after we've done it a few times, and even after as short a time as about 3 days, those neural networks start to change. And so in the beginning, it will be conscious, deliberate effort. After a while of diligent practice, it will be second nature. You will have that spaciousness and choice around your emotions, no matter what is going on around you. So what I'm teaching today is just a tiny, tiny facet of emotional mastery. What I want to quickly tell you about is I'm building a much bigger container for teaching emotional mastery in 2020, and I'm super excited about that. I'll tell you more about it at the end. I just want to mention it quickly here. Like I said, it takes time to develop that feeling of spaciousness from when a trigger happens or an intense emotion happens, and then we respond. Those emotions often feel so sticky that when something happens, we just like explode. That's what I would do. Something would happen and I would not have any control over myself. I would either explode or I would completely just numb out, right? I would check out, numb out, that was it. Emotional mastery includes a lot more than just looking at emotion. And so in that bigger container that I'm building, we're going to dive into the other two components, which are looking at our mental mastery and also our body. We have to include our body on this journey because our body is the memory, like that's where our emotions live. And so it can't just be a mental exercise. And so I'm creating this program for impact makers who are wanting to elevate their self-mastery and self-leadership by building this stable foundation of skills in a community, in a supportive, accountable environment, so that when something does happen, it's easy. It is second nature for you to have that space rather than just freak out and react. I can't wait to tell you more about it at the end, but I just wanted to briefly mention that. I'll give you all the details for what that's going to look like. So that's, in a nutshell, why I love to focus on emotions first. Okay, so let's look at how do you know that you're not so masterful with your emotions? How do you know that? How does that come up? Well, it's easy to look at some of the symptoms. For example, have you ever asked yourself, am I doing something wrong? Why do I keep getting the same trigger? Why can't I just get a handle on this thing that I keep feeling over and over and it just won't go away? So I'm doing something wrong is a common pattern. Another one is I've tried it all and I'm still feeling this. Again, it's like you feel like you've gone around the circle, that hamster wheel, and yet you still have that same response or same reaction, right? Having a disproportionate reaction to the size of the trigger. And I have a funny story about this that I'm going to share with you in a couple minutes here. But an example of that is feeling, I would feel this, not just frustration, not just anger, but I would feel rage when someone left dishes in the sink that they didn't clean up after themselves. So it was like my husband, my kids, our exchange student. I would see the dishes there, knowing they're not mine, and whoever didn't take care of them, it was like, it was the end of the world, right? That, you know, you have an issue, an emotional issue, and stuck emotions when that happens. Another example could be you're driving down the road and someone cuts you off and you just completely blow your top, right? That's another small trigger, comparatively speaking, and the reaction can be really, really big. Another symptom is not being able to feel strong, positive emotions. So the joy, the meaning, the happiness, right? All of that, the love even. If we spend a long time numbing the difficult emotions, we can't actually access the positive ones either. Another symptom is judging ourselves for feeling emotions or judging others' emotions. And then the last one that I'm going to mention here is trying to justify or explain your emotions away. Now, these are just a handful. Like there's tons of them. These are just the most common ones. All right. So, any questions so far? Is this pretty clear? I don't know how to. Where's the chat? I can't see it. I'll find it. But if there's questions, pop them in there. All right. So let's look at what is emotional mastery. And again, this is my take on it, right? There's many definitions out there. There's so many people that teach this. Let's look at what it's not. Okay, hang on. I think chat. Here we go. Perfect. Awesome. Thanks, Anne-Sophie. Anne-Sophie is helping me as moderator, and I'm so grateful to her for her expertise and everything. So thank you so much for being on here, Anne-Sophie, and helping. So what is emotional mastery? Well, let's look at what it's not. Emotional mastery is not thinking positive when something emotional happens. It's not trying to override a difficult emotion with a positive one, right? You can't go from being raging to being super happy all in one shot. It doesn't work that way. It's also not bypassing or trying to put an emotion aside and not feel it, or pretending that you don't feel it, right? An emotion just will not be ignored. It's also not judging yourself and making yourself wrong for feeling. So again, this is just a handful of ways that we can describe what it's not. There's obviously other examples. What it is knowing how to decode what an emotion is trying to tell you, because all emotions are useful, right? Emotions aren't good or bad in and of themselves. They are all useful. They are all purposeful. But it's when we don't know why we keep feeling them over and over that it becomes really difficult. We can get stuck and sometimes really, really derailed or go on this massive detour because of emotion. And when we know how to handle it, when we know how to help our nervous system process it and release it from the body, that's when we start becoming more masterful in our life. It's also knowing how to redirect yourself back to your desired feeling state. It's that idea of choice that I mentioned before. Knowing you have a choice, no matter what is going on around you, you know that you can choose how you want to respond. That is mastery. And some of the science behind emotion. There's a brilliant scientist. She's passed away now in 2013, but her name was Dr. Candace Pert. Brilliant, brilliant woman. She's got a great book out called The Molecules of Emotion, and it's based on her research that this whole field was revolutionized. She discovered that emotions are molecules. Gosh, I completely forgot the name of it now. Phospholipids? I don't know. Anyways, we dive into that more in the course I'll be teaching, but they're molecules. And like I said before, they're not good or bad. There are no bad molecules that our body sends out or produces, right? It's only our perception of them that makes them either good, bad, difficult, or empowering. Emotions as a basic function are indicators that something is going on, right? Sometimes they're actually really, really useful. Like imagine you have a child who is running ahead of you, and they run out into the road. And you feel this massive amount of fear and maybe even anger as you run after them and grab them and pull them back to safety, right? That is a really, really useful context for feeling an intense emotion. It's only when we don't know how to come back to a place of homeostasis or a place of balance or equilibrium that those emotions can cause trouble for us, right? We know that this isn't even woo-woo anymore. It's hard science that stuck emotions cause illness and disease in the body, and they suppress our immune system, right? So knowing how to relieve yourself and release yourself from stuck emotion is such a paramount skill to have. All right, does anyone have any questions about emotions? It's obviously, this is like Cole's Notes version of what an emotion is. Perfect. Okay, so let's get into the technique. Okay, I'm gonna talk about it in a couple different ways, and then I want you to try it. So I'm gonna leave a couple minutes here. If you had a situation today where maybe something happened, or if you have a situation that you can call up to mind, I'm gonna invite you to practice this technique with me. Okay, so CPR, the acronym CPR stands for 3 words: call it out, position, and redirect. And so I'll briefly talk about each step. So when an intense emotion happens, for example, and I'll share my personal story here, which is, now that I think about it, like ridiculously hilarious, but at the time it really sucked. So my son was boiling noodles one day on the stove and making a humongous mess. And I don't like messy kitchens. So I felt that rage come up that I mentioned before, not just for dishes, but also messes. And so I was gonna, I felt the rage, and I was like, perfect timing to practice my technique, right? So the first letter, C, stands for call it out. So as you notice this intense emotion coming up, call it out by name. Call it whatever you want. It doesn't have to be a proper name, but it has to be specific to you. And so I gave you on the right hand side here, there's one of many examples of emotional charts. This one is Dr. Robert Plutchik's chart that gives you some names of different emotions. So as I'm watching my son boil these noodles on the stove, instead of being deliriously excited that my kid is feeding himself, I'm raging that he's making a mess. And so I would call that emotion saying, I feel rage. The next part of this technique, the P, stands for position, meaning what you want to do once you've named it is zero in on it in your physical body. So where are you feeling that emotion in your physical body? So to go back to my example, as I'm feeling the rage, I can notice that my face is getting hot. My breathing is getting shallow. It was like this constriction in my core that I was feeling, this intensity. And so that's what I was focused on, is this sensation in my body. This can be different for different emotions, right? Sometimes if we're sad, for example, you could feel a lump in your throat or some sort of intensity in other parts of your body. Most often it is in the core or in the head. So that's the point of number 2, is find the position in your body and focus in on that. You want to stay with that sensation until it passes. Okay, so you're not gonna focus on the thoughts as you're thinking as you're feeling the emotion. You're going to be focusing on the sensation in the body. Focus back on the position in your body. Your goal from of that focus is to shift the emotion, or wait until it shifts. How long does that take? Well, back to my noodle story. So I stood there watching my kid boil the noodles. He's doing a great job. He's stirring them so they don't stick, sloshing the water all over the place. And I'm standing there raging, really trying really hard to focus on the position in my body, right? So I'm feeling the heat. I'm feeling that constriction in my core. My mind is going nuts. my thoughts are going crazy, but that's not what I'm focused on. I'm focusing on the sensation in my body. And how long does it take to boil pasta? Roughly 7 minutes, right? Just as he was getting to the point where he would sieve the water out, that's when I felt it lift. I literally felt almost like the sensation evaporated out of my body and my rage was gone. And I've never felt it since. Like, not to that extent. I still don't like a messy kitchen, but I've never felt it since to that extent, right? Now it's more like annoyance, not rage. So the last step of this process is, once you get to that place where you feel the sensation dissipate, that's where you have that choice to redirect to something else. So again, what else do you want to redirect to? Anything else that helps you feel just a little bit better. So for me, in that example, I actually managed to get to this place of like, wow, great job, Brayden. Like, great job, dude. You're making lunch. Awesome. I no longer felt the rage. I was able to tap into an emotion and thoughts that felt a little bit better, and then obviously a lot better. This is where that, I'm just making sure. Cool. Thank you, Suzanne. I'm so glad you're here. This is also where that choice comes in, right? And I'll talk a little bit about this in the emotional traps section, because we can trap ourselves in ruminating on that emotion that we just released. This is where we have to exercise our choice to deliberately choose something else to focus on, right? So if you can't think of something in the moment, you can go back to looking at the emotion wheel here, the emotion flower that Dr. Pluchik developed. There's other examples. Make yourself a list of emotions that you prefer to feel and reach for those. So again, to recap, CPR stands for call it out by name, position in your body, and redirect. So what I'd like to do is take a couple minutes and just invite you to either call up an intense emotion that perhaps you experienced today, or remember a time when, in the last maybe week or month, that you had a situation where an emotion was intense, and try to get yourself into that. Go back to that time, see what you saw, hear what you heard, feel what you felt, and see where you feel that emotion in your body. All right, it might not come up quite as intensely as if it happened right in this moment, right? If someone were to, like, you're on this webinar, you're paying attention to what I'm saying, all of a sudden something happens, someone comes into the to your office or your room and starts yelling at you, right? Imagine that happening. That would be really uncomfortable, and so then you would be able to call up an emotion right away. But we can also call it up just by thinking about a past experience. So does everyone have an example? I'd love to hear what you would call that emotion. So you can stick it in the chat. What would you call that emotion, and where did you feel it? I don't know if there's like a delay or how long it takes for comments to pop up, but I would love to hear your example. Like, you don't have to give me the story of what happened, but what emotion did you feel, and where did you feel it in your body? Disgust in the stomach. Beautiful. Disgust, embarrassed chest, and flushed face. Lovely. Perfect. Can't name the emotion. Maybe fear in my chest. Beautiful. Yeah, so exactly. You already know how to do this. You're all experts. Done. So if you can recall that emotion already, overwhelm, throat, stomach. Beautiful. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Anxiety in chest and back. Perfect. You guys got this. That's exactly what I'm talking about. So naming the emotion, what it does is it allows you to literally diffuse it, like start diffusing it, right? It's like you call it what it is and it starts to lose its power. And then when you focus in on the body, the sensation in the body, what's happening is, instead of your brain, instead of focusing on your brain and the stories and the thoughts that keep coming up as you're feeling that emotion, and you keep releasing those molecules of emotion that keep flooding your body, by focusing strictly on the sensation, it's like you're cutting off the supply of that molecule to the body. It takes about 90 seconds, up to 7 minutes or more, right? I can't promise you how long, but usually about 90 seconds for the body to start processing and flushing those molecules out. And then when you can redirect to something else, you start thinking different thoughts, you start producing different molecules, right? Does that make sense? Okay, so good job, everybody. I love those examples. Okay, so let's look at some tips. And then after that, we'll look at the traps. Okay, so as you're doing the CPR, right, call it out, position, redirect, what you want to avoid doing is focusing on what you're thinking about as you're feeling. And I just mentioned this, right? Because, again, to recap, as you're feeling, let's stick with my example of rage. As I'm feeling the rage, what my brain starts doing, what my mind starts doing, is bringing up all other examples of when I felt rage in the past. And if I listen to those stories and I get myself even more emotional, then, like I said, my brain's going to keep pumping those molecules of rage into my body. My day is going to go south really, really fast. So you want to avoid listening to the stories that your mind will tell you. You also want to avoid trying to change the sensation or the emotion by force. We're not here to change it. We're not here to judge it. We're only here to feel it, give it space. And in the spacious feeling experience that I talked about in the beginning, we're going to dive into a lot more as to why we need to do that, why we need to honor the emotion. We're going to dive into where emotions come from and what they are beyond molecules, so that we understand exactly the message that emotion is giving us, so that it becomes easier to focus on it rather than on the stories that, you know, often we basically start to ruminate, and then our day just goes south from there, right? So again, avoid trying to change the sensation or the emotion. Simply stick with it. Feel the sensation of it. Allow yourself to connect with your body and truly feel, right? It can be really uncomfortable. If you're not good at connecting with your body, if you've never really tried, if no one's ever taught you how, it can be uncomfortable. I can tell you that when I was standing there watching my son cook and the rage was like raging, it honestly felt like my body was coming apart at the seams. Like I felt like I was going to explode. You won't. You won't explode. It's simply a sensation. And yes, it can be very intense, but just remember that you are absolutely safe as you're doing this. One caveat that I want to say is, if you have unresolved trauma in your past, if you've never worked on releasing the trauma, then be really careful with this. Work with a professional, something that I'm happy to help you with, or seek other professional help so that you don't re-traumatize yourself accidentally. It can happen. It's this technique is not meant to deal with deep trauma. So just want to put that out there. And then a couple other tips is, because this technique happens all inside you, you don't actually have to speak anything out loud. You can do this anywhere and no one has to know you're doing it, right? So for example, let's say you're at the checkout line at the store and the person in front of you is being rude to the cashier and it really makes you angry. You can practice this technique right there, then and there. Right? You're not there to change what the person in front of you is doing. You're not there to change their behavior or call them out on it. You're simply going to notice how angry you are. You're going to call that emotion out. I'm angry. I'm going to focus in on where you feel it and stay with it until it changes. And then you're going to redirect your thoughts to something else that you want to think about and another emotion that helps you feel better. So you can really practice this anywhere. And no one has to know. All right, so let's talk about traps. There's many, many traps. This is just a handful of the most, like the biggest ones that I've come across. What do I mean by traps? Well, it's when this technique doesn't seem to be working. And it's because there's some sort of secondary gain for us not to want to release the emotion, right? We can sit with the emotion for, like 7 minutes, 10 minutes, and it's not budging. There's something else going on. So again, in that case, I would invite you to reach out to someone who can help you unravel, unpack, dissolve whatever it is underneath that. So trap number 1 is attachment to the emotion. So again, I'll share a personal story of how this works. This attachment is when you feel so justified or so righteous in feeling this emotion that you actually don't want to release it. And that happened to me more than once, but this is sort of a story that illustrates that. There's a member of my family who I felt triggered by for years. And even after I was able to accept the fact that this person will probably never change their behavior and I'm probably always going to be triggered by them, that gave me a little bit of peace, but I still felt hatred towards them when I felt triggered by them. And yes, hatred, I use that word very deliberately. I liked feeling the hatred, to be honest with you. I liked feeling it because it helped me feel better about their behavior. If I allowed myself to hate them, it gave me that like righteousness, that justification about their behavior. And I just had to give myself permission to just hate them. Like, I was okay. I gave myself permission, even after accepting that they would never change, to simply allow myself to feel that emotion, as long as it took. And it took several months of other personal work. But then I was able to finally let go of the hatred and shift into, something else. The person still triggers me, right? They're still in my life. They're going to be in my life till the end of my life or their life, whichever comes first, right? And so giving yourself permission to feel an emotion that you're not ready to let go of is really, really important. And that could be one of the traps, is this attachment to the righteousness. I hope that makes sense. Trap number 2 is trying to think your way through the emotion instead of feeling it. And I've touched on this a little bit. Those stories in your head are gonna come up. That is the job of our mind, is to think. Like, that's what it does best. And it resurrects all the stories of the old emotion that we have felt, of that emotion that we felt in the past. I've hated lots of people throughout my life. My brain was trying to tell me all those stories as I was feeling that hatred. You want to avoid this trap. You want to, again, focus on the sensation, not the story. Trap number 3 is a variation of that, right? Buying into the story that your mind is telling you. Those stories, they're the past. Again, it's like, what do you want more? Do you want to have that choice and that spaciousness around emotion, or do you want to buy into your old stories? We all have that choice to make, right? Trap number 4 is believing that the emotion is who you are and judging yourself for it. This is like, this makes me so sad. And I used to do this too so much. When you feel something, you get mad at yourself for feeling it. And again, for most of us, it's not our fault that we do that, because that's just what we were taught to do when we were kids, right? We were told, you're not allowed to feel this, or our parents would get mad at us, or we'd get beat up at school, or whatever bullying or abuse happened. We started to believe that we are bad for feeling those emotions. We are not. Let's just stop that right now. Emotions are not who we are. Emotions are simply an experience we're having as a result of the thoughts we're thinking, as a result of what's going on around us. That's it. We have the choice to change them. And that's a big part of the emotional mastery work. And then, of course, Pretending you're okay with the emotion when you're not okay with it. It's that variation of putting yourself on trial for feeling. This isn't about lying to yourself. This is about being super duper honest. What is it that you're feeling? Call it out. Where are you feeling it? Position in your body. Stay with that until you feel that neutral place, and then redirect to what you want to feel. So does that make sense to everybody? I haven't seen any chat stuff pop up, but all right. So those are the traps. And again, it's like there's more than that, but those are just the most common ones. Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so I want to tell you about an invitation that I have. This is the Feeling Spacious Mastery, Feeling Spacious experience that I'm building as a container. I'm going to launch that in 2020, and you are the first to hear about it. So can't wait to share that with you. Like I said in the beginning, emotions are only one part of being that leader in your life, that impact maker, that has a big message to bring to the world, and be happy while you're at it. It took me a really long time to get to a place where I wasn't bashed around and accosted and stagnated by my own emotion. And I felt a lot of shame around this. It took me 13 years. Like 13 years is a lifetime, people. It's crazy. Because the main reason was because I was so ashamed. I didn't want to ask anyone for help. I was doing this work in secret because I judged myself and rejected myself so much. I didn't want the world to do that to me too. And so now on the other side of that, I wish I could go back to myself and just give myself permission to be human, to go through this with help and reach out a hand and ask someone to help me, or even join a community that would have supported me through it. It wouldn't have taken me 13 years. And that's one of the biggest reasons why I'm creating this, is because emotional mastery is something that I do one-on-one with my clients, but I'm being called to do this work in a much bigger way and build a community around it where we can dive into these skills and go on a journey together and support each other and keep each other accountable and watch each other grow, so that it doesn't have to take anybody 13 years or longer, right? It can take a much shorter period of time. And there's 3 very important components to emotional mastery that we're going to be looking at in this program. It's going to be 9 weeks long, and we're going to have a community. It's open to 12 people. We're going to look at the mind aspect. So we're going to look at exactly where emotions come from and what their purpose is, how to stop that mental freight train. And there's more tools that I'm going to share. And then how truth and acceptance fit in. That's a very mental game we can play with ourselves. We're also going to look at the body. The body plays such an integral part in how we deal with emotions, because our body is what memorizes those emotions, right? When our brain keeps releasing the same molecules, the same substances all the time, our body memorizes that. And this is why some people wouldn't see happiness, wouldn't recognize happiness if it stood in front of them. But we can learn how to reprogram our body, and that doesn't have to take very long. So we're going to look at understanding the physiology of emotions and the stress response. We're going to look at how to feel into the body itself, how to feel safe inside our body. And then look at learning some specific points to release muscle memory of stress and old emotion from the body. And actually, I'm including one private session with me in that experience. So it is a group experience, but everyone gets a private session with me to pinpoint specific old emotions, specific old stress, and release it from the body that way. And then we're also looking at, obviously feelings, right? The emotional side of things. We're going to dive into what the neutral zone is and how to get there. I'm going to teach an advanced version of the emotional CPR tool. And we're going to look at how to stop putting yourself on trial. So those are the components. It's going to be 9 weeks. And here are the details. So it's a 9-week program, emotional mastery journey for impact makers, for people who are either entrepreneurs, up and coming or emerging thought leaders, or people who simply want to elevate their game and feel more confident and more clear and more aligned in their life, so that no matter what happens, nothing derails them, right? Nothing. Oh, thanks, Anne-Sophie. Thanks for posting the link to the page that talks more about this program. We're going to begin in January. So, think of being able to master yourself over the next year, and being able to practice all these skills within a community first, and then knowing that you can handle anything that comes up in your life. So again, like I said, it's 12 spots only. There's going to be 9 group calls. Everything's recorded. We're going to have a private community on Facebook for support and sharing. And of course, you have lifetime access to the material for as long as the course exists. And the early bird investment is $498. That's on until December 10th. And for everyone who signs up on or before December 10th, you get your choice of a 30-minute Akashic Records reading with me, or a 30-minute numerology blueprint with me. So if that's something you've been curious about, now's your chance to get that as a bonus from me. And then after December 10th, the investment, so the regular investment for the course is $555. And Anne-Sophie posted the link to the page for me. Thank you so much. Here is the link again. It's just on my website /FSE. That's the invitation I have for you. I'm so excited to share that program, because even though I've been doing this work for so long, I still practice it. And so I'm gathering a community of impact makers who are ready to practice this and really to elevate. And I'm going to be doing this work right along with you, because it's something that really never stops. We simply get better and better at it, and becomes more and more second nature. And we feel that spaciousness around emotion. I mentioned that in the beginning. It's like something happens and you can take a breath and then respond. That's gold. Okay, what questions do you have? I'm going to stop right there. I'm going to stop sharing so I can see those of you who have your cameras on. And I would love to hear what questions you have. So you can either unmute yourself, or you're welcome to pop it in the chat. You can ask questions about anything I talked about the program, whatever it is that's coming up for you.
Kasia,
yes?
I don't know if you can see me. I can't tell if my camera's on. I was just going to say, I don't know who here's worked with Kasia before, but I've known Kasia for 4 years or something now. Thanks. And I've had a chance, so this is Anne-Sophie. I've had a chance to work with Kasia and be supported by her through many breakdowns, and then go through the other side of the breakthrough. So I just wanted to say a personal, it's my personal experience of having been supported by Kasia through numerology, and I think my camera's pointing the wrong direction here.
Yeah, I can't see it. I'm looking at
I don't know, something's
the
wrong.
wall or something.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, wait, hold on. I think I got it. Oh, here we go. Yeah, so I've had numerology and Akashic Records several times, and just so much support through the years. And so I can't recommend her enough. Really, it's just if it feels like, she's going to be a fit to guide you, she's a really great guide. So
thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. And Erin's saying she got interrupted by a phone call, so we'll have to catch the replay. Yeah, no problem. I will send that out in the next probably couple hours once it downloads. So no questions from anybody about anything? Vicky, I love your explanations of this theory. I will have to say goodbye. Oh, perfect. Yeah, thanks, Vicky. Thanks so much for joining me. I appreciate it. See you later. Cool. Well, I'm so grateful that I'm so grateful to all of you who joined me, and Thank you so much. If you have questions in the meantime, or if something pops up, please either email me, or you can find me on Facebook and message me. I'm happy to chat with you. And definitely check out my invitation to the program. I look forward to having you in there. And look, we're even done ahead of time, so that makes me feel good. And I wish you an amazing rest of your day and week, and I will see you soon.